My husband got jealous of a customer with special needs who only wanted me to serve him. He tried to force me to quit my job. When I refused, he said, "You must be in love with him too." I stayed quiet, but his actions spoke louder than mine ever could. I have been married to my husband Ryan for about 2 years, together for 5. We have 2 children, and I honestly couldn't be happier until Ryan found out about the customer. I run a cafe with my sister Jess, and it's located in a very popular neighborhood with lots of office workers. There's also some type of day center. This day center is for people with different kinds of disabilities. They do simpler types of work. There's a boy named Thomas who is maybe 25 to 30 with Down syndrome that works there. Every morning his taxi drops him off at 7:30, and he comes to our cafe and gets a breakfast and coffee and sits on the same table facing my workstation. He doesn't say much, just smiles and asks how I am today and what my plans are. He refuses when my sister Jess or one of the girls helps him. It must be me. If I'm busy, he waits until I'm available. Then he starts his day at 8. We close at 4 p.m., and at 3:30 p.m., he comes again and sits on the same table until his taxi comes around 4, and usually I give him a soda or a smoothie on the house. Apparently, when I'm not working, he gets very confused, stays for a while without understanding I'm not there, and then leaves without eating. My sister Jess and her wife Sarah were invited for dinner with me and my husband. I was homesick the week before, so she was laughing and telling us about the boy and how he refused to be served by any other and just waited outside for me. My husband was confused, so my sister Jess explained everything about this customer. My husband was silent the rest of the dinner. When they went home, he asked me why I never told him about this customer, and that he thought that the guy was being disrespectful. He asked if he knew I was married. I was confused as to why he would say something like that. Then he became angry because I said that Thomas had Down syndrome. He said that there are functioning people with this syndrome and that I was the prejudiced one, not him. I told him that I was aware of that boy in question seemed and appeared to be much younger, and when he started, one of the people working in the day center noticed his behavior and came to check if he was making us uncomfortable, and explained that he had the mind of an 8-year-old and as creature of habit. At the time, we told them that he was very polite and pleasant to have as a customer. My husband wasn't happy about it. Next week, my husband showed up at 7:30 and took that exact table the boy usually takes. When he came, he was very flustered and didn't know what to do, so he just stood near my workstation with his sandwich and coffee in hand. I asked him if he wanted me to help him find another table, but my husband was very angry and told the boy to respect me because I'm a married woman and to not come and stare at me again. The boy apologized, and he just left and waited outside all confused. I was heartbroken and begged my husband to apologize and to leave the table because the boy is a creature of habit and doesn't really like changes. He said he didn't care because obviously he's in love with me. My sister Jess told my husband about how I got a Valentine's card last year. When I got home, my husband said that he makes good money and we don't need my income. He had contacted my sister Jess to ask her to take over my share of the cafe because I didn't need to work. He said he was disappointed because I never told him about my customer or the card he gave me, so I must have thought it was out of line. But it wasn't like that at all. It's just that I get hundreds of customers every day, and I don't have to tell my husband about all of them. He said it wasn't the same as someone who's in love with me, being in my cafe every day and sometimes when I'm alone. This infuriated me, but we somewhat made up and I thought we would be okay. All that to say, the next morning he was almost non-talkative to me. I asked him if he was still mad, and he said he just needed time to think about things. I had no idea what that meant, and I was still pissed at him because of his irrational thinking about this whole situation. Ever since that day, he hasn't really been the same. He doesn't do it all the time, but he will avoid me on certain days where I tell him about a funny story at the restaurant. The spark was slowly fading, and I didn't know what to do about it, but resigned from it. I had hoped that if I did that, he would be happy, and we could move on from this whole stupid ordeal. When I told him the news, he acted happy, but it was obvious that he was faking it in some aspect. At this point, I'm starting to suspect that he is losing feelings for me, as he has seemed to have more frequent late nights at the office. If what I'm thinking he is doing is true, my heart has already shattered. Every time I try to talk to him, he just shuts me down with a lie about how he loves me and everything is fine. I can't make him budge, and I feel like I'm trapped in a hole with no way out. Update: it's been 6 months, and I have some crazy tea on what went on for the past 6 months. So, I thought I'd been careful to change enough details that husband Ryan wouldn't recognize himself if he happened to see it. Big mistake. Literally 2 days after I posted, one of his coworkers named Kevin saw my post, recognized our situation from things Ryan had mentioned at work, and sent him the link. I was in the kitchen making dinner yesterday when Ryan came home early, slamming the front door so hard the windows rattled. He stormed into the kitchen, his face red with anger, holding his phone out with my Reddit post on the screen. "What the hell is this?" he demanded. "You're sharing our private life online for strangers to judge me?" My heart dropped to my stomach. I hadn't intended for him to ever see it. I just needed someone to talk to since he wouldn't communicate with me anymore. I tried to explain that, but he wasn't listening. "Do you know how embarrassing this is? My coworker Kevin sent this to me asking if it was us." He paced around the kitchen, running his hands through his hair. "Everyone's calling me controlling a hole. Is that what you think of me?" The kids started crying in the other room, upset by the shouting. I hurried to check on them, trying to calm them down while my mind raced with what to say to Ryan. When I returned to the kitchen, he was sitting at the table with his head in his hands. "I can't believe you would do this to me," he said quietly. "You sold me out for internet points." That's when I realized just how far apart we'd grown. He was more concerned about his image than about the actual problems in our marriage. The jealousy, the controlling behavior, the possible cheating. None of that mattered to him as much as what strangers thought of him online. "Ryan, this isn't about embarrassing you," I said. "I posted because I didn't know what else to do. You won't talk to me anymore. You got jealous of a man with special needs. You tried to make me quit my business. What was I supposed to do?" He looked up at me, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of understanding in his eyes. But then his phone buzzed with another notification, and his expression hardened again. "Pack a bag," he said coldly. "I'm going to stay at Mark's place tonight. I need to think about whether this marriage is salvageable after what you've done. Mark is my husband's best friend, so that's where we are now. Ryan left last night, and I've been up all night crying and trying to figure out what happens next. The kids keep asking where daddy is, and I don't know what to tell them. All of this because my husband got jealous of a Thomas with Down syndrome who likes his routine. I never thought my marriage would fall apart like this, but I'm starting to wonder if it was ever as solid as I believed. Was this ridiculous jealousy just the first crack in a foundation that was already weak? I honestly don't know anymore. I woke up the next morning to my son, Liam, crying. I dragged myself out of bed, my eyes puffy from crying all night. As I picked him up and tried to soothe him, our daughter, Emma, wandered in, rubbing her eyes. "Where's Daddy?" she asked. I forced a smile. "He's at Uncle Mark's house. He'll be back soon." I hoped that wasn't a lie. I went through the motions that morning. Breakfast, cartoons, getting the kids dressed. My phone stayed silent. No text from Ryan. I kept picking it up and staring at our last messages from before the fight, wondering if I should reach out. But what would I even say? Around noon, Jess called. "Hey, just checking in. You okay to work tomorrow?" I'd almost forgotten I was on the schedule. I don't know, Jess. Ryan found the Reddit post. "Oh, damn," she said. "How bad was it?" I gave her the quick version while keeping an eye on the kids playing in the living room. She listened, occasionally making sympathetic noises. "What a massive overreaction," she said when I finished. "You didn't even use real names." I know, but his coworker recognized our situation and sent it to him. Now he's staying at Mark's and I don't know what's going to happen. "Listen," Jess said firmly. "Don't worry about the cafe. Take a few days. But my wife Sarah and I are coming over tonight with wine and takeout. You shouldn't be alone right now." After hanging up, I tried to focus on the kids, but my mind kept wandering. I checked my phone constantly. Still nothing from Ryan. Around 2 p.m., I decided I couldn't wait anymore and texted him, "Can we please talk about this? The kids are asking for you." 3 dots appeared immediately, disappeared, then reappeared. Finally, still figuring things out. "We'll call later to talk to the kids," not even addressing me directly. Great. True to his word, he called that evening to talk to our children, Emma and Liam. I put them on speaker and stood awkwardly nearby while they chatted. Emma asked when he was coming home. Ryan just said soon and changed the subject. When the kids were done, I picked up the phone. "Ryan, please, I can't talk right now," he interrupted. "Mark and I are headed out." Then he hung up. Jess and Sarah arrived an hour later with Thai food and 2 bottles of wine. After the kids were in bed, I broke down completely, sobbing into my pad thai. "I don't understand how it got this bad," I said, wiping my nose with a napkin. "All over a customer with special needs." Jess's wife, Sarah, who works as a therapist, looked thoughtful. "This can't just be about Thomas. There has to be something else going on with Ryan." "Like what? Cheating?" I asked, my stomach twisting at the thought. "Maybe," Jess said, pouring more wine. "Those late nights at the office are pretty suspicious. Or it could be insecurity," Sarah suggested. "Sometimes extreme jealousy comes from a place of deep insecurity. Has anything else been stressing him lately? Problems at work? Family issues?" I thought about it. He did get passed over for a promotion about 3 months ago. He was really upset but didn't want to talk about it much. Sarah nodded. "That timing lines up with when this jealousy started, right?" We talked until midnight. By the time they left, I felt a little better. At least I had a theory. Maybe Ryan's behavior wasn't really about Thomas at all. Maybe he was projecting his career disappointment onto our marriage. The next morning, Ryan texted asking to come by and pick up more clothes while I was at work. I told him I was actually taking a few days off and suggested we use the opportunity to talk. He agreed to come over during the kids' nap time. I spent the morning anxiously cleaning and rehearsing what I wanted to say. When the doorbell rang at 1 p.m., my heart was pounding. Ryan looked terrible, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, wearing the same clothes from 2 days ago. I invited him in, and we sat at the kitchen table, an awkward silence stretching between us. "The kids miss you," I finally said. "I miss them too." He stared at his hands. "This isn't how I wanted things to go." "What did you want, Ryan? To control my career? To dictate who I can serve coffee to?" He flinched. "That's not fair." "Isn't it? You even tried to buy out my share of the business without even discussing it with me." "I was trying to protect our marriage," he said, his voice rising. "This guy is obviously obsessed with you." "He's not obsessed. He has special needs and likes routine." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "But let's be honest. This isn't really about Thomas, is it?" Ryan looked confused. "What do you mean?" "This started right after you got passed over for the promotion. I think you're taking out your frustrations on me because it's easier than dealing with your disappointment." His face flushed. "That's ridiculous. This has nothing to do with my job, doesn't it? You never had a problem with my work before. Suddenly, after your promotion falls through, you decide I shouldn't be working at all. That's not—" He stopped, looking away. "You don't understand. Then help me understand. Talk to me, Ryan. What's really going on?" He was quiet for so long I thought he wasn't going to answer. Finally, he sighed heavily. "Kevin got the promotion," he said quietly. "Your friend Kevin? I thought you were happy for him." "I was. I am." But he hesitated. "The day after he got the promotion, I overheard him talking to some guys in the break room. He was telling them about how his wife was going to cut back her hours now that he got this raise, about how a man should be able to provide for his family without his wife needing to work. The other guys were agreeing with him. I stared at him. So what? Who cares what Kevin and his dinosaur friends think? They all looked at me when I walked in. They got quiet. I know they were thinking that I couldn't provide for my family like Kevin could. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So, this is about your ego? About looking like a real man to your coworkers?" "It's not just that," he insisted. "When Jess started talking about this guy who waits for you every day, who only wants you to serve him, it made me feel even more inadequate. Here's this guy seeing you every day while I'm stuck at the office working my ass off. And for what? I couldn't even get the promotion." "Ryan, that's—" A cry from upstairs interrupted us. Liam was awake from his nap. I went up to get him, my mind reeling from Ryan's confession. When I came back downstairs with Liam on my hip, Ryan was standing by the door. "I should go," he said. "We're not done talking about this," I told told him. I know, I just need more time. And then he was gone again. I stood there bouncing Liam, wondering how my life had turned into such a mess. That night, after putting the kids to bed, I called my mom. I hadn't told my parents about our separation yet, but I needed my mom's perspective. She listened to the whole story without interrupting. Oh, honey, she said when I finished. Men and their fragile egos. What should I do, Mom? I love him, but I'm not going to give up my business because he's feeling insecure. Of course not, she agreed. But maybe there's a compromise somewhere. Ryan needs to work through his insecurities, but you can help him see that his value isn't tied to being the sole provider. We talked a bit longer, and by the end of the call, I had a plan. The next morning, I texted Ryan, I think we need professional help. Would you consider marriage counseling? His response came quickly. Yes, I'll find someone. I felt a small flutter of hope. At least he was willing to try. 2 days later, Ryan texted that he'd made an appointment with a marriage counselor for the following Tuesday. He also asked if he could come see the kids that evening. I agreed, thinking it might be good for all of us. When he arrived, the kids were ecstatic. Emma launched herself at him, and even little Liam toddled over excitedly. I watched them playing together in the living room, my heart aching. This was what I wanted to save. Our family, our home. After the kids went to bed, Ryan and I sat down to talk again. The atmosphere was less tense this time. I've been thinking a lot, he said. You were right about me projecting my work disappointment onto our marriage. I'm sorry. I nodded, accepting his apology but waiting for more. And the Reddit post? I overreacted. I was embarrassed, but I understand why you needed to vent. I should have talked to you directly, I admitted. But you weren't listening. I know. He looked down. I want to do better. That's why I found us a good counselor with experience in couples therapy. We talked a bit more about logistics. He would continue staying at Mark's until our first counseling session, but would come by to see the kids regularly. It wasn't perfect, but it felt like progress. The weekend passed in a strange limbo. Ryan came over Saturday afternoon and we took the kids to the park. We were cordial with each other, even friendly at times, but there was still a wall between us. On Sunday, he took Emma and Liam to visit his parents while I went to the cafe to catch up with Jess. He actually admitted he was wrong. Jess looked skeptical when I told her about our conversations. Sort of. He acknowledged he was projecting his work issues onto our marriage. And the ridiculous Thomas situation? I sighed. We haven't specifically addressed that yet. I'm hoping the counselor will help with that part. Speaking of Thomas, I hadn't seen him since Ryan's scene at the cafe. Has Thomas been coming in? I asked. Jess nodded. His caretaker started coming with him. Apparently he was really upset about the incident with Ryan. They're helping him adjust to a new routine. I felt a pang of guilt. I should apologize to him. Maybe. Let's see what the counselor says first. You don't want to set Ryan off again. Tuesday arrived, and I felt nervous all day. Ryan picked me up for our 4 p.m. appointment, and we drove mostly in silence. The counselor's office was in a small professional building downtown. Dr. Morgan Wilson was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. So, she said after introductions, tell me why you're here. Ryan and I looked at each other, neither wanting to start. Finally, I gave a brief overview of our situation, the Thomas incident, Ryan's jealousy, the Reddit post, our separation. Dr. Wilson listened carefully, occasionally making notes. Ryan, she said when I finished, what's your perspective on this situation? Ryan shifted uncomfortably. I know I overreacted about the customer. I've been dealing with some insecurities about my role as a provider, and I think I projected those onto this situation. That's insightful, Doctor. Wilson nodded. But I'm sensing there's more to it. Ryan was quiet for a moment. I guess I've always been a bit jealous. Not in a controlling way, but I've always worried that my wife is too good for me, that someday she'll realize it. I stared at him in surprise. This was the first I'd heard of this. Where do you think that fear comes from? Dr. Wilson asked. My dad left my mom for his secretary when I was 12, Ryan said quietly. He told her he'd found someone more exciting. I guess I've always worried about not being enough. The session continued like this, digging into our backgrounds and the root causes of our conflict. By the end of the hour, we had homework, communication exercises and individual reflection questions, and a follow-up appointment scheduled. In the car afterward, I reached over and took Ryan's hand. I had no idea you felt that way, about not being enough. He squeezed my hand. I should have told you. Instead, I just let it build up until I exploded over something ridiculous. It's not entirely ridiculous, I admitted. I probably should have mentioned Thomas to you, just as a funny cafe story if nothing else. It might have avoided all this misunderstanding. We agreed to keep working on our communication and continue with the counseling. Ryan wasn't ready to move back home yet, but he started coming over for dinner most nights and helping with the kids' bedtime routine. After our second counseling session the following week, I decided it was time to address the Thomas situation directly. I asked Ryan if he would be willing to go to the cafe with me to apologize to Thomas. Is that really necessary? He asked, looking uncomfortable. I think it is, I said. Not just for Thomas, but for us. We need to face this together and put it behind us. He reluctantly agreed. We arranged to meet at the cafe during Thomas's afternoon visit. I warned Jess ahead of time so she could give the day center a heads up. The day of the planned apology, I was nervous. What if Thomas was still upset? What if Ryan couldn't handle it? We arrived at the cafe around 3 p.m. Jess gave me an encouraging nod from behind the counter. At 3:30 sharp, Thomas arrived with his caretaker, a kind-looking woman named Linda. They sat at his usual table, the one facing my workstation, though I wasn't working that day. Ryan and I approached them slowly. Hello, Thomas, I said gently. Do you remember me? Thomas looked up and his face brightened. Coffee lady, you're back. Yes, I am, I smiled. And this is my husband, Ryan. He has something he'd like to say to you. Ryan stepped forward, clearly uncomfortable but determined. Thomas, I'm sorry for how I behaved the last time I saw you. I was rude and I shouldn't have taken your table or yelled at you. Thomas looked confused for a moment, then his face cleared. That's okay. Sometimes I get mad too. Linda explained that Thomas had been upset about the disruption to his routine, but was adjusting well. He still talks about you, she told me. You made quite an impression. He's a special customer, I said, smiling at Thomas. Ryan was quiet on the drive home, but it wasn't an angry silence like before. When we pulled into the driveway, he turned to me. Thank you for making me do that, he said. I needed to face it. How do you feel? Embarrassed, ashamed, but also relieved. Like maybe I can stop being the villain in this story. That night, after the kids were asleep, we sat on the couch talking. Really talking in a way we hadn't in months. About our fears, our insecurities, our hopes for our future. I want to come home, Ryan said finally, if you'll have me. I want that too, I told him. But we need to agree on some things first. We talked about boundaries and expectations. I made it clear that I would continue working at the cafe. It was my business and my passion. He agreed, apologizing again for trying to make that decision for me. We also agreed to continue counseling and to check in regularly about our feelings instead of letting things fester. And no more Reddit posts, he asked with a small smile. No more Reddit posts, I promised. Unless they're about cute things the kids did. The next day, Ryan moved back home. It wasn't an instant fix. We still had awkward moments and disagreements, but we were talking through them instead of shutting down. A week later, I returned to work at the cafe. Thomas was there with his bright smile, happy to see me back at my usual spot. When I told Jess that Ryan and I were working things out, she seemed cautiously optimistic. He's really changed, I assured her. The counseling is helping a lot. I hope so, she said. Just don't let him make you give up parts of yourself to soothe his ego. That kind of jealousy can be a red flag. I know, but I think this was more about his own insecurities than trying to control me, and he's working on it. Over the next few weeks, we fell into a new rhythm. Ryan started making an effort to be more involved with the kids when he got home from work, giving me a break and strengthening his bond with them. We continued our weekly counseling sessions, and slowly, the tension between us eased. One evening, about a month after our reconciliation, Ryan came home with flowers. Not as an apology this time, but just because. I thought about you today and wanted you to know, he said simply. It was these small moments that gave me hope we were on the right track. We weren't perfect. Far from it, but we were trying. The real test came when I got a text from Jess one afternoon. Ryan's here at the cafe. Don't worry, he's just having lunch. My heart raced as I read it. Was he checking up on me? I texted back, everything okay? Seems fine, she replied. He's just eating a sandwich. When I got home that evening, I asked Ryan about his visit to the cafe. I wanted to face it, he explained. The scene of my ridiculous jealousy meltdown. Dr. Wilson suggested exposure therapy, putting myself in situations that trigger my insecurities and practicing healthy responses. And how did it go? I asked, impressed by his initiative. Good, I think. Jess was nice to me, which I didn't expect. He paused. Thomas came in while I was there. I held my breath, and we said hello. He remembered me from our apology visit. I told him I liked his dinosaur t-shirt, and he told me all about his favorite dinosaurs. Ryan smiled slightly. He's a good kid. That night, lying in bed next to Ryan, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in months. We had a long way to go, but for the first time, I truly believed we would make it. The next morning, Ryan suggested we plan a family vacation, something we hadn't done since before the kids were born. Nothing fancy, he said. Maybe a beach rental for a weekend? Just the four of us. It was such a normal, hopeful thing to suggest. I smiled and kissed him. That sounds perfect. Later that day, as I served Thomas his afternoon smoothie, he noticed my improved mood. You happy today? He observed. Yes, Thomas, I am, I replied, realizing it was completely true. That's good, he said decisively, then returned to happily slurping his smoothie. Sometimes wisdom comes from unexpected places. As I watched Thomas enjoying his routine, I thought about how close I'd come to losing everything over a misunderstanding and unspoken insecurities. Ryan and I still had work to do, but we were finally talking, really talking, and facing our problems together instead of letting them tear us apart. The Reddit post that had almost ended my marriage had actually been the catalyst for saving it, forcing us to confront issues we'd been avoiding. Life is funny that way sometimes. Not everything works out, but when you're willing to put in the effort and face hard truths, there's always hope for something better on the other side. I woke up this morning feeling more rested than I have in months. It's been 2 weeks since Ryan moved back home, and while things aren't perfect, they're definitely better. We've been to 3 more counseling sessions with Dr. Morgan, and each time it feels like we're peeling back another layer of our issues. Last night, Ryan surprised me by suggesting we invite Jess and Sarah over for dinner this weekend. I think I owe them a proper apology, he said while we were doing the dishes. Especially Jess. I tried to go behind your back with the cafe thing. I nearly dropped the plate I was drying. Really? You want to do that? He nodded, looking a bit uncomfortable but determined. Dr. Morgan suggested I make amends with the people I hurt during my episode. He gave a self-deprecating smile. Her word, not mine. So that's how we ended up hosting a dinner party tonight. Ryan spent all afternoon cooking, something he rarely did before our separation. He made his mom's famous lasagna and even baked garlic bread from scratch. The kids were excited about Auntie Jess coming over and kept running around the house, helping, by moving things from one spot to another. When Jess and Sarah arrived, there was an awkward moment in the entryway. Ryan hadn't really spoken to them since they'd found me crying over my pad thai that night. Thanks for coming, Ryan said, offering to take their coats. I made lasagna. Jess raised an eyebrow at me over his shoulder, but handed over her jacket. Smells good, she said cautiously. The first 20 minutes were stilted conversation about safe topics. The weather, Sarah's new haircut, Emma's preschool art projects. But after we'd all had a glass of wine and the kids were occupied with their dinner at the little table in the corner, Ryan cleared his throat. I want to apologize to both of you, he said, looking directly at Jess and Sarah. I behaved terribly. I was insecure and jealous, and I took it out on everyone, especially you, Jess, when I tried to buy out her share of the cafe without her knowledge. Jess looked surprised at his directness. That was pretty terrible, she agreed. I know. and I'm sorry for putting you in that position. The cafe is her business and her passion, and I had no right to interfere. Apology accepted, Jess said after a moment. But just so we're clear, if you ever pull something like that again, I won't be so forgiving. Ryan nodded. That's fair. Sarah, ever the mediator, raised her glass. To fresh starts and honest conversations. We all clinked glasses, and the tension in the room noticeably eased. The rest of the dinner went surprisingly well. Ryan and Sarah discovered they both loved the same obscure sci-fi show, and Jess seemed to enjoy teasing Ryan about his meticulous garlic bread slicing technique. After they left, Ryan and I cleaned up together while the kids played in the living room. That went better than I expected, I admitted, loading the dishwasher. Your sister has every right to hate me, Ryan said, scrubbing the lasagna pan. I was terrible to you, and I tried to mess with your business. She doesn't hate you. She just needed to see that you're actually sorry, not just saying it. I am sorry. For all of it. He set down the pan and turned to me. You know what the worst part is? I actually convinced myself I was doing it for you. For us. Like somehow making you quit your job was protecting our marriage. I leaned against the counter. How do you see it now? Now I see I was just trying to control the situation because I felt out of control in my own life. He shook his head. Dr. Morgan says I was using external solutions to fix internal problems. Sounds about right. Ryan went back to scrubbing. I'm just glad you gave me another chance. Later that night, after the kids were asleep, we sat on the couch watching a movie. I was curled against Ryan's side, his arm around me, when my phone buzzed with a text from Jess. He seems genuinely sorry. I'm cautiously optimistic. Call me tomorrow, with a red heart emoji. I smiled and put my phone away, snuggling closer to Ryan. For the first time in months, it felt like we were moving in the right direction. The next day was Saturday, and we decided to take the kids to the park. It was a beautiful spring day, perfect for flying the kite Emma had gotten for her birthday, but hadn't had a chance to use yet. Ryan spent nearly an hour running around the open field with Emma, showing her how to keep the kite in the air, while I sat on a blanket with Liam, who was happily smashing toy trucks together. As I watched them, I realized how much I'd missed these simple family moments during our separation. Ryan caught my eye from across the field and gave me a wide smile that made my heart flutter a little. It reminded me of when we first started dating. We were packing up to leave when I spotted a familiar face across the playground. Linda, Thomas's caretaker from the day center. She was with a small group of adults with various disabilities, including Thomas, who was enthusiastically pushing a younger man in a wheelchair on the adaptive swing set. Ryan noticed them at the same time. I felt him tense slightly beside me, but then deliberately relax. We should go say hi, he said, surprising me. Are you sure? He nodded. Part of my recovery, right? Facing the things that trigger me instead of avoiding them. We walked over with the kids. Thomas spotted me immediately and waved enthusiastically. Coffee lady, he called out. And, coffee lady's husband. I was touched that he remembered Ryan that way instead of as the man who had yelled at him. Linda greeted us warmly and introduced us to the rest of the group. We come here every Saturday, she explained. It's part of our community integration program. Ryan knelt down so he was at eye level with Thomas, who was now sitting on a bench. That's a cool dinosaur watch, he said, pointing to Thomas's wrist. Thomas beamed, holding out his arm to show it off. T-Rex. It roars when it's lunchtime. He pressed a button, and the watch made a surprisingly loud roaring sound, causing Liam to giggle in delight. Dinosaur, Liam shouted, one of his few clear words. This led to Thomas showing Liam his watch up close, both of them laughing every time the T-Rex roared. I glanced at Ryan, trying to gauge his reaction, but he seemed completely at ease, chatting with Linda about the day center's programs. We said goodbye after about 10 minutes, promising to say hi if we saw them at the park again. As we walked back to the car, I squeezed Ryan's hand. I'm proud of you, I said quietly. He squeezed back. It wasn't even hard this time. He's just a nice guy who likes dinosaurs and routine. And roaring watches, I added, making him laugh. That night after the kids were in bed, Ryan brought up something unexpected. I've been thinking about therapy, he said. Not just couples counseling, but individual therapy for me. I looked up from my book, surprised. Really? He nodded. I want to understand why I reacted so strongly to the whole Thomas situation. Dr. Morgan thinks it might be connected to my dad leaving, but I think there's more to it. I think that's a great idea, I said, genuinely impressed by his self-awareness. And, he continued, looking a bit nervous, I've been thinking about the cafe too. My stomach tightened. Were we back to this again? I think I should come by more often, he said, quickly adding. Not to check up on you or anything weird like that. Just to normalize it, I guess. Make it part of my routine instead of this place I've built up in my head. I relaxed. I'd like that. Maybe you could bring the kids for Saturday morning pancakes sometimes. That sounds perfect. The next few weeks fell into a comfortable new pattern. Ryan started his individual therapy sessions, and we continued our couples counseling. He began stopping by the cafe once or twice a week, sometimes for lunch, sometimes just for coffee to go. The first few visits were a bit awkward, but soon it became normal. Thomas continued his routine of morning and afternoon visits. He always greeted Ryan with a cheerful, coffee lady's husband, which became something of a joke between us. Ryan even bought a dinosaur tie clip that he wore to work on days he knew he'd be stopping by the cafe, just so he could show it to Thomas. About a month after our reconciliation, I was working the morning shift when Ryan texted me, meeting canceled, taking the rest of the day off. Pick you up for lunch? I glanced at the clock. It was only 10 a.m. and I wasn't off until 2. Can't leave until my shift ends. I texted back. I know, he replied. I'll hang out and help Jess until you're done. Sure enough, he showed up 30 minutes later with both kids in tow. Emma immediately ran to show Jess her new light-up sneakers, while Ryan settled Liam in a high chair with some Cheerios. What's this all about? I asked, leaning across the counter to give him a quick kiss. Just missed you, he said with a smile. And I thought the kids might like to see where mommy works. Jess rolled her eyes behind him but gave me a thumbs up when he wasn't looking. To my surprise, Ryan asked if he could help out, and and Jess put him to work clearing tables. He was surprisingly good at it, chatting with customers and making Emma feel important by letting her carry the napkin holder while he wiped down tables. Thomas came in for his morning visit and seemed delighted to find Ryan there. "Coffee Lady's husband is working too," he exclaimed. "Just helping out today," Ryan explained, pulling up a chair to join Thomas for a few minutes. I watched them from behind the counter, still amazed at how much had changed. The man who had once been insanely jealous of Thomas was now sitting and chatting with him like they were old friends. When my shift ended, Ryan had already packed up the kids and was waiting by the door. "Where are we going for lunch?" I asked. "It's a surprise," he said with a mysterious smile. The surprise turned out to be a picnic in the same park where we'd run into Thomas and his group. Ryan had prepared everything that morning: sandwiches, fruit, cookies, even juice boxes for the kids. He'd packed a blanket and even remembered Liam's favorite stuffed rabbit. "What's the special occasion?" I asked as we spread out the blanket under a large oak tree. 6 years, he said. I looked at him confused. 6 years ago today was our first date, he explained. "I took you on a picnic in this park, remember?" I did remember, now that he mentioned it. It had been a perfect spring day just like this one. We'd talked for hours, and I'd been late getting back to work because I didn't want the date to end. "You remembered," I said, genuinely touched. "I should have remembered more things these past few years," he said quietly. "I got so caught up in trying to be the perfect provider that I forgot to be a good partner." I leaned over and kissed him, ignoring Emma's dramatic, "Ew." That evening, after the kids were in bed, Ryan brought out a small wrapped gift. "One more thing," he said, handing it to me. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with 4 small charms, a coffee cup, a dinosaur, a tiny replica of our house, and a heart. "The coffee cup is for you and your cafe," he explained as I examined each charm. "The dinosaur is to remind us both about Thomas and how we almost let insecurity ruin our marriage. The house is our home together. And the heart, well, that one's obvious." I felt tears welling up as I fastened it around my wrist. "It's perfect," I whispered. "We're not perfect," Ryan said, pulling me close. "But we're working on it, and that's what matters." 6 months later, we're still working on it. We have our ups and downs like any couple, but the communication tools we learned in therapy have helped us navigate conflicts much better than before. Ryan still goes to individual therapy twice a month, and we check in with Dr. Morgan every couple of months for a couple session tune-up. The cafe is doing great. We even expanded to open a small second location in the business district downtown. Ryan's company finally gave him the promotion he deserved, but the difference is that now he doesn't measure his worth by his job title or salary. Thomas still comes in every day for his breakfast and afternoon smoothie. He still prefers me to serve him, but he's comfortable with Jess or our other employees if I'm not available. He and Ryan have developed their own little ritual where they discuss dinosaur facts every time Ryan stops by the cafe. Last week, Emma asked if Thomas could come to her 5th birthday party. I wasn't sure if that would work with his routine, but Linda thought it was a great idea for his social development. So tomorrow, Thomas will be joining us in our backyard for cake and games, along with Emma's friends from preschool. Life isn't perfect. Ryan and I still have moments of insecurity or miscommunication, but now we talk about them instead of letting them fester. The Reddit post that almost destroyed our marriage ultimately saved it by forcing us to confront issues we'd been avoiding for too long. Oh, and don't worry guys, Ryan Green lit up this Reddit post. Haha.